Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Makoyo Lushola. I am the head of communication information for UNESCO regional office in Abuja. I sincerely want to welcome you to this special meeting being organized by Bako Kotangora Development Foundation. This is a special webinar, and the package is being put together by Bako Kotangora Development Foundation, like I said, in collaboration with UNESCO Regional Office. This morning, we shall be looking at the importance of the impact of COVID-19 on rural education, to have a look at the forgotten button, those in ghettos and those in the slums, as well as the underprivileged. I'm just going to quickly run through with you our special people that everybody special, don't mind me, the resource people that will be anchoring this program this morning. Like I said, I am Macaulay Olushola. I will be moderating this meeting for the next 1 hour, 30 minutes or thereabout. And once again, I want to plead with you to please mute your microphone. If you are not called to speak, please mute your microphone. I say this again, so that we can all have a very smooth meeting. Now, let me quickly introduce to you the mover of this webinar in the name of Hajia Awa Bako. She's the founder of Bako Kantagora Development Foundation. She has put this project together so that we can see the impact of COVID-19 as it affects rural education with reference to Niger State. Also, in this meeting, one of our special resource person in the name of Magdalena Matulewis. She's the senior teacher and trainer in charge of early childhood care education. She's the president of Natural Born Leaders. She will tell us a brief about her in the course of this meeting. Also here, I have the president of Rural Teachers Association from Uganda, in the name of John Sentamo. He will be sharing with us the experience of Uganda this morning. I also have a very special person, a friend and a colleague, in the name of Jide Zubair Attash. Is a consultant for UNESCO on gender as well as media and information literacy today. Also, in midst, a special person, the Honorable Commissioner for Education in Niger State, Ajia Anatu Saliu, who is presently attending to another official meeting, but being represented by Mr. Umar Farouk. He will be doing justice to the presentation of the Commissioner for Education in Niger State. I also have to introduce to you the chairman and the CEO Bako Rich Limited in the name of Malam Aminu Mohamed Bako. You are welcome to this special webinar too. And lastly, but not in the, not the least, is my friend Fola Aina, international security analyst. Is an analyst when it comes to issue of security and development expert. So I also have to inform you that I have some of my colleagues from the office here, Yashat Niru and Ying, and some other ones that I can take time to really mention at this meeting. Once again, I want to welcome you to this special webinar. I'm going to leave you right now to the founder of Bako Kotangora Development Foundation. Please, I recognize everybody in this meeting. We cannot continue to mention it because we have a specific time that we need to spend on this webinar today. So I welcome you once again. I will be moderating this meeting, and if you have any question after the presentation, please don't hesitate to write it uh, at the right-hand side of the chat room. We'll take your questions and we'll put it up with the presenter or whoever that you think you want him or her to answer your question. Over to you, Adia Awa, and good morning once again, colleagues.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is good today. My name is Bako Mohammed. I'm the founder, CEO, Bako Integrated Development Foundation. Bako Integrated Development Foundation is a non-governmental organization which is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 17. But as of today, we're going to concentrate more on SDG 4, which is quality education, leave no one behind. Bako Integrated Development Foundation has an initiative known as the Antugoma Community Education Enterprise. Antugoma Community Education Enterprise is a community-based organization. It's a registered community-based organization. Knowledge and Innovation Network. The CBO is a social enterprise made up of community education learning centers in many remote villages and wards, where out-of-school children are brought together to have basic education as cheaply as possible, charging a very minimal fee of 10 naira, enough to procure basic education materials and aids, and sometimes free. It therefore derives its name from a mix of the English and the Hausa language, anti, and Goma, meaning the figure 10, which represents the daily 10 naira fee. The educators are out of work women who were school teachers and have the basic qualification to teach.
We want you to just go through the short film. She will explain what the film is all about to you in the course of our presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. Some of the challenges of the Antigoma Community Education Program is the inability of the parents to pay the basic 10 to 20 naira per day fees for their children, the lack of institutional coordination of Antigoma activities and absence of communication among educators. These also have shortage of teaching aids, like school boards and classrooms. To address the issue, BKDF promised to help secure funding to support the learners whose parents cannot pay so that they can remain in the program. The challenges. Based on our topic, impact of COVID-19 on rural education, a look at the forgotten middle, a look at the forgotten button, slums and ghettos, etc. More than a third of the lower income children don't have a computer at home, and more than a quarter don't.
It's maybe her mic has been muted accidentally. Moderator.
Thank you. I'm sure you finished your presentation, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will just want us to understand the fact that part of the problem in this part of the country and this part of the world is internet connectivity, and that's why you've been witnessing this fluctuation. And I believe that with the coming of the COVID-19 that are taking all of us to now be looking at a new narrative in terms of using internet in the country, I believe that our government may have to be now looking at how to work with the providers to improve on the internet connectivity if we have to go by the way that Awa is trying to let us go, especially in Niger State. We need internet connectivity to be able to provide education for rural dwellers. If we are having this problem even in city, it shows the complexity of the internet that we are having. Having said this, I'm going to now bring on board our senior education consultant in ISCS from United Nations, from United Kingdom, in the name of Magdalena Matules. She's going to be giving us insight about science, technology, engineering, mathematics model on COVID-19. Over to you, madam.
Okay, hello everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Magdalena Matulevich. I hope you can hear me well. Can you? Right? Okay, so I represent Naturable Leaders, which is a teacher training provider, UK based. I am personally, I am Polish and I'm speaking to you from Malaysia, where I'm currently on lockdown with my family. So it's evening here, but good morning to all of you. Thank you for invitation. I'm really happy to be here because it's a very, very important topic that we are addressing right now. A brief about my background and my journey and how it relates to what we are talking about today. I'm a teacher trainer, assessor in early years education and school play work. And first of all, I'm a global citizen, and this is very important here. For the last 15 years, I've been living and traveling through more than 30 countries, being part of the communities with people, living with them, not only passing by. So the variety of experiences relating to education that I have had a chance to see and be part of have shown me and us in Naturable Leaders, which is a family project which I run together with my husband. So living with people, seeing the quality of education in the developing countries, economically well-developed countries and underdeveloped countries. So the whole spectrum of experiences that I had a chance to be hands-on with and see directly, from being in the playgrounds, at schools, talking and working with teachers, families, playing with children, being part of people's lives and everyday lives, have made us realize one important thing, that no matter where we are, we have a very similar problem when it comes to education. And this is regardless of what we have and regardless of the economic status of the countries. And this is very important to emphasize here. Regardless of what we have, and let me share a screen with you here briefly. Regardless of what we have, and no matter where we are, our children receive the very kind of similar education, which is very much based on passive academic learning. As a world, as a humanity, we have a problem with this, and what we offer on a general scale is passive academic learning focused mostly on two basic skills, literacy and mathematical achievements, that leads our children towards tests. So this is the reality regardless of the globe, and this is the reality I've experienced as a teacher, as a parent, and as a global citizen. So as you can see from the collection of pictures here, it doesn't matter whether we have a screen or we have a nice designly classroom. If children are learned in exactly the same way, if we teach them in exactly the same way, really it doesn't matter what we have or what we don't have, because the result will be more or less similar. Obviously, there will be things like safety, like basic needs that will need to be addressed, and this is very much related to the country, to the region. So this we should not neglect. But what I'm trying to say is that, especially with COVID-19 and everybody's eyes focused on technology and especially online learning, we need to understand that education, and especially future-oriented education and quality education, does not equal screen or online learning. Does not. Before COVID, it was mostly about books. It was, in the past, it was about worksheets, about handbooks, about course books. Now it's about screen. Now it's mostly about technology. But we need to remember that these are tools, and these do not equal high quality education. So if you look at this collection of future-oriented skills and mindset that we need right now, we desperately need our children to be equipped with now and in the future. These are all about creativity, about core life skills, about collaboration, self-expression, talent management, independent thinking, problem solving, and positive self-image. These are the essential core life skills that our children need, and this is regardless of where we live and where we are the teachers. If it's Nigeria, if it's Dubai, if it's Malaysia, if it's any other place in the world, all children deserve to receive this kind of education, because the life skills will prepare them for the future. And if you think about computer-based learning or worksheet-based learning, these are mostly about passive learning. Passive because not whole person is involved. It's mostly about receiving the knowledge, receiving facts, yes, learning about something, but not necessarily being in the world and interacting with the world as a human being, solving real problems. Passive learning is more like receiving. while active learning is about being there, using your body, using your hands, your senses, collaborating, interacting with the real world. And only through active learning, our children will be able to develop life skills beyond the academic learning, yes? Because academic learning is just a fraction of what our children need. And now, after COVID, we need to make sure all the children, regardless of the place, receive this holistic learning. And holistic learning happens through active learning, whole person learning, real problem solving. This is what natural born leaders have been trying to implement even before COVID. And this is the way to go now. And we thought that regardless of the place, it is possible. And you may ask, well, we don't have a resource, we may not have computers, we may not have things like, you know, nice toys or educational resources. How can we achieve this? So we were thinking about this, and we have tried this active holistic learning. Obviously, to reach the teachers in your region, in any other region, we need this technology, yes. But this technology is to connect us teacher trainers with the teachers that are somewhere in the remote areas. And what we did, we started this project with this beautiful association in Uganda, because we had technology and because they had internet, because they had basic things like laptop or projector. They were able to get together and use the resources that we prepared for them as teacher trainers, to share with them how to implement active learning, active holistic learning, and give it back to children. So as you can see, those teachers, these are real pictures from Uganda. It happened right before COVID. So as you can see, we use the screen, we use the projector. Teachers discuss, teacher create, teacher get hands-on, and they learn how to implement active learning. And what happens next? They bring this learning to the students. So you can see what is happening in the classroom. In the classroom, instead of children sitting at the tables, not moving too much and absorbing knowledge, they do. They are active learners. They decide, they move around, they manipulate, and they interact with each other, they collaborate. And this kind of learning, as you can see, it's cross-curricular. It's about supporting early literacy, numeracy in a different way, in a holistic way. It's about fine motor skills. It's about sensory stimulation, because you can see this child tracing with his finger in the tray sand, very simple resource. This is the way children can learn beyond workbooks. And no fancy things are necessary here. If you look at the next picture, look what these teachers have achieved after a few teacher training sessions that were possible because of access to technology. But for teachers, the teachers use everyday objects to implement, facilitate early science, early maths, experiments, collaboration, discussions. This kind of learning becomes alive, becomes active. Children become active participants, decision makers. They become confident. As you can see here, teachers used everyday objects. They didn't have access to fancy toys, but what they did, they used mangoes, tomatoes, bananas, and they came up with, they used these objects as wonderful teaching resources to provide active learning so that children can participate, that children can feel confident about their learning, they can own their learning, they can discuss, they can be proud. Here, again, you can see the teacher uses everyday objects such as clothing that can be easily used to compare, contrast, practice fine motor, hand-eye coordination, solve problems, predict, reason, collaborate. This is very, very high quality learning that children deserve to be offered, and it's active learning. It's about core life skills. Next example. Students, they by active participants. It's about matching colors with object. It's about matching colors with clothes. It's very simple activities, but through these activities, children discuss. They use language. They cross boundaries between being shy and to communicating, speaking. There's so much learning involved. Look at this one, using everyday objects to support cross-curricular learning.
Magdalena, just 1 second, please. Please, Bako, you will need to mute every participant in this meeting, please. And if it's possible, you can disengage this particular person. Can you please go on, madam?
Okay. So as you can see, our training input was based on what we have, and the teacher's adaptation was based on what was available at their end. So they didn't have the materials that we had for in our teacher training input, but they adopted. They use local materials, whatever was available, and they become very creative to achieve something like that. So as you can see, the only thing that was necessary here to reach those children and teachers in the rural area was electricity, internet, laptops or projectors, and local coordinators that could gather the group of people, and they could learn, they could meet once a week, and then they could bring these things to children. Obviously now, because of the group training limitations, this can be organized within the principles of social distancing, maybe but these are the possibilities of bringing high quality active learning to rural communities. And this solution is scalable. Yes, we can reach as many communities as we only wish if we collaborate together. And obviously the technology providers, local people, and collaboration. And there we go. We can offer children beautiful active learning experiences. And from this point, I would like to pass on to John, whom we collaborated on this project, and who helped with. Without him, it wouldn't be possible, because he put all his effort and enthusiasm to gather the teachers, and he has direct experience with this kind of learning. So, John, over to you. And I thank you, all of you, today for your participation, and I hope sharing this brought a lot of hope and motivation to all of you, so that we can take it further and we can make it available in your region and make it possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Magdalena. This I can see the comment from the participants in terms of using education aids to teach, and I believe that these are the things that we are really lacking in this part of Africa. And I know that the representative of the Commissioner of Education from Niger State is looking at this, and we believe that this is the way to go in terms of early childhood education. Thank you very much once again for this wonderful presentation. We are going to call on John to please share with us the experience from Uganda. Over to you, John.
I appreciate everybody. I welcome everybody to this call, most especially the organizers of this call and the moderator. I bring greetings from Uganda to you. I'm a teacher who has been doing the teaching since 1998 to date, and I'm proud to be a teacher. I don't regret being a teacher. I do believe that this webinar is very timely, because I'm the founding president of Rural Teachers Association. For us, before even COVID-19, we had already found out that rural education needs attention, and we can only be the right people to be the answers to the challenges faced by the rural teachers and the learners and the parents, because we are with the children, we are with the learners, we are with the parents and the teachers. In rural schools, we don't have the access to fancy facilities, the iPad, the tablet, all those, we don't have them. But at the end of the year, all the children sit the same examinations, and they must all pass, regardless of their location, which means as teachers, we need to think outside the box, most especially the rural-based teachers. How are we giving these children the best they deserve from where we are without lamenting? That's why we came together with natural born leaders to do this. We felt that teachers need to be equipped, and then they will equip the learners to excel, actively excel in their learning. And they offered us a training. We organized the teachers. We have been meeting because we made sure that distance should not stand in our way of learning new ideas to make active learning possible in our rural setting. This lady and her wonderful husband accepted us into their planning, and we did a pilot study. We started organizing the teachers. The teachers were so happy because most teachers in the rural schools here in Uganda, I can say most of them are not qualified because they lack money to go for qualifications. They don't have a chance to go and they get the proper training. But with natural born leaders, we are able to share with the teachers who are in a rural setting the skills they need to excel in their way of doing the work. And I'm happy to let you know that this has amazingly worked out. We don't need every child to have an iPad, we have to have a tablet. We only need to have a teacher with one laptop, a projector, internet, and a space where information can be projected. Madarena and her husband were always with us during the training. They never traveled. We don't need an air ticket for one to come from wherever he is to come over here. No, you help us from where you are. That's what we have found out with Madarena and her wonderful husband. That they are here. We don't need an air ticket. When you ask a trainer asks you, can you pay my air ticket to Uganda to come and give the training? And you find that as a rural school, you can't afford an air ticket because you can't even afford paying a teacher the worth a salary. And then an air ticket becomes a stumbling block between this teacher's improvement of his performance and then the children's access to right information to excel holistically and actively. But because COVID has come in, this has been a timely wake-up call for education thinkers to start planning beyond being this physical training where we need, because experts sometimes don't travel, even if it is in Nigeria, as it is, this moderator of ours can be a very good teacher or trainer, but he can hardly travel to another place. But if we have the webinar, he can, how can he conduct it, bring teachers together with a webinar, and they are trained. We share the knowledge without an air ticket, without a 5-star hotel accommodation, and the education training is passed on, and the teachers become wonderful teachers, and the wonderful teachers are the one who's in charge of having wonderful learners. I do believe that if we can equip at least internet, all can work. It's a computer, a projector, internet access, space is there. Rural teachers can be wonderful teachers. They can do work, and our children will live to be actively enjoying the learning, and we make the best out of our learning for tomorrow that is shining, for tomorrow that will change the way things are. Because today it is COVID-19, tomorrow we don't know what pandemic will come. Now all airports are closed. Next time, we don't know what will be totally closed. But we need to think as educators. We need to think beyond that. If now all schools are closed, no learning, our children are at home because we are rural-based. But should that mark at the end of education? Have we come to the end of education as educators? No, we should always keep thinking beyond. And a webinar like this one is timely. But it is timely in a rural setting if we can have a computer per school, internet per school, and we can even formulate clusters. If we can't have, we say, 5 schools for a start, 2 computers.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for your presentation. I know this is the way to go because this will help even the government a lot to reduce financial resources. The number of teachers we are going to employ will be reduced. The number of classrooms that you are going to use will be reduced. And like I said, I believe this is a way to go. I cannot say but to say big thank you to your presentation. I know that the listeners, you are listening to this presentation. Please don't hesitate to put your questions on the right side of the chat room. If you have a contribution to make, I will allow you. That depends on the time. Just make sure you raise your hands up. You will see that at the top hands of the chat room to raise your hand. Without wasting much of your time, I'm going to call on Mr. GHETTO. Mr. GHETTO is a consultant for gender as well as media and information literacy. He will be looking at issues relating to media and information literacy in a culturally diverse environment like ours. You may be asking why are we bringing in media and information literacy in today's webinar? There's no way you talk about education without talking about media, talking about literacy, talking about information itself. You won't agree with me the havoc that misinformation and disinformation caused during this COVID-19. A lot of problems that Spears brought up his head during this COVID-19. So I'm going to leave you with Mr. GHETTO for the next 7-8 minutes to take us through issue relating to media and information literacy and how we can use media and information literacy to even educate our people in the rural area. Over to you, Jide.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Macaulay. I'm happy to be on this, and I quite enjoyed the format that this webinar has gone. And I want to appreciate Magdalena for showing us that there has to be gender balance when it comes to education issues. And then she brought her husband on screen so that at least we can see that, because basically these are very foundational issues. And I'm happy Hawa brought one male, just entered into Hawa's frame, and just to let us know that especially when it comes to these issues of education, it takes two to tango. Two will always educate so many more. And that support system is very important when we are looking at this concept. Now, going to Magdalene's presentation, I see a nexus and similarities on the issue of possible learning, so which is very good. It's comforting to know that this is a global phenomenon. We initially might have thought it was a local issue, and so it's comforting psychologically that it's actually a global issue. And perhaps as a quick takeaway before I go into that this thing, this may be the beginning of the formulation of an African policy on rural education and the urban poor. So maybe we begin to look at that. Maybe we do a concept note and maybe start regionally, structurally, and then we go African-wise and things like that. So notwithstanding, I would just, most of what has been said so far really borders on what Mr. Macaulay brought up as media and information literacy. Now we're going to go a little bit up the notch into issues of policy, because media and information literacy borders on policy, on community engagement in terms of information and communication of that information, collecting ideas and dissemination and utilization of those ideas, which is exactly what Magdalena and John. Oh, John, I enjoyed that. I hope you saw my chat when I said you are now called Uncle Goma, an honorary member of the Nigerian anti-Goma community. So please let's give John a round of applause as well. Yeah. Okay. Now, so media and information literacy stands for MIL, which is an acronym for media and information literacy. Basically, combines elements of media and information. Now, literacy in this instance does not mean you should be able to read and write, which is some of the things Magdalena and John reiterated, and some elements of what the anti-Goma is using everyday tools that we have. So before now, we had different types of literacy, which was media, information, and for formal schools, you have the library, you have even our oral artifacts, etc., that were elements from which we could derive information and knowledge. One, about our cultures. Secondly, about our cultural views, our world views, our ethos, and how to understand, how to relate with other people from different communities. It also helps us to look at the gender perspective to development education. So it's just the ability to, MI is just the ability to analyze, access, critically analyze, evaluate, and produce media and information content, which are elements of what Magdalena showed in the slides and what John was talking about and what Hawa showed in the earlier video. So when we say why MIL, let's look at this COVID-19 virus situation, for example, as an example. Studies are beginning to show that there was a lot of over information in the system, especially those who were lucky enough to have internet. So they had the WhatsApp messaging, Facebook, and all that. Even in rural and, communities and urban poor communities, they have these elements of information gathering. So um, most of the problem, in fact, I think the World Health Organization brought up an issue and said one of the outfalls of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, is infodemic. So how do we use elements of MIL now to inform and educate our rural poor and our rural communities and the urban poor who do not have so much access or knowledge enough to be able to sieve out what is the right information or what is the wrong information? That's what basically MIL stands for. Now, so if we inculcate elements of MIL, we can now begin to have a better gender appreciation, and that leads to reduction or possible elimination of gender-based violence and interspousal violence because of the lockdown and everything. People are more cooped up. Before, there were other coping mechanisms, like you have to go out, at least go and engage in some form of work, or you just go into some sporting activity. But now we are all cooped together. If we are cooked together, even in the rural areas where they do not have so much space, then what are the elements of MIL that can be deployed into this? I like the concept of STEM, STEM, as propagated by Magdalena and John on that. So we have to start to look at elements of MIL when it comes to application of transmitting education to the rural poor, the rural and the urban poor, and the forgotten, as we call it, the forgotten bottom. One, it can be applied to avoid hatred, to avoid conflict, to minimize conflict, to avoid violence, and to avoid danger. So it also brings us to issues of governance. John has already given us a very good concept, a picture of how they've been able to apply governance issues and governance structures to rural education, especially for those who cannot afford governance. So they might we might need to employ him to be able to share more of this good practice, so that we can begin to see the models that can be transportable, of course, with local color and adaptation based on culture and all that, transportable to elements of this rural education and urban education of the urban poor. Of course, one of the challenges we'll have now is the issue of spacing, social distancing. But lucky for us, the rural communities have space, so that shouldn't be much of a problem. The challenge now will be the urban poor who are in the ghettos and all that. So that how do we manage these kind of pressures and challenges that we know we already know are already endemic right now in our trying to plan for deployment of STEM and the anti-GOMA, and infusing that to the anti-GOMA model of community education. In essence, what media and information literacy can do is to try and help to collate the various types of media that we are using. The cultural, which is called the aura media, which is the African traditional system of imparting education and information about cultures, where people sit down and have an elder tell them stories and have cultural dances and issues like that. If we can infuse such elements into making education fun, I really like some of the slides that Magdalena shared with us. It showed elements of fun, and basically that's what education should be. It should be fun. So if we infuse elements of that media and information literacy, it will help us. So we have to now perhaps start to investigate into what kind of media is applicable to a local cultural setting, and then use that as a means of developing curriculum or curricula for that specific cultural setting. And I believe that the STEM model seems to fall into that kind of an application. I'm very happy that using the Niger State government as a pilot and a representative, actually a technocrat in that field, who would develop, who most likely would be able to take this information, since he works with the Ministry of Education at a top management level. This kind of a model can be emulated, so that we see how we can begin to have communities of learning. Another quick takeaway I can advise on using the MIL, the Media and Information Literacy structure, is the formation of hubs and communities of learning, even on a global basis. If I recall, UNESCO they have something they're doing about community or statewide internet. I'm sure Mr. Macaulay will bring us up to speed on that, whereby they have incubation hubs, technology incubation hubs, which might be one of the answers to what John brought up. If they can have clusters and hubs where elements of media and information literacy can be deployed using the STEM system of approach with local color, and let's see how we can begin to help out. That might be some of the formulation of the basis for the African policy on rural education and the urban poor. I do not know if such a policy exists, but good thing UNESCO is here, and it's mostly their responsibility to handle issues of education. For now, I will just step down, and if there are any questions, I'll be glad to take them on after. Over.
Acha, I was thinking you will be able to show the non-formal guide.
Okay. So brilliant. Yes. In the process of that, I've worked with UNESCO on formulation of curriculum. I don't know if we can see this. It's called non-formal education guide, which could be very useful too for deploying the STEM principle. And for John, look at it. I'll just bring it closer. It's upside down, but non-formal education guide.
Take it up a bit. Okay. Take it up. Yeah, roll it up, bit up.
That's it. Non-formal education guide, which has been developed. I was one of the people who was lucky to be part of the formulation and the editing and production of this document in line with civil society organizations. So there are so many of these tools. If you go to the UNESCO site, let us begin with this webinar, begin to look at how we can form a holistic approach with different adaptability measures when it comes to deploying STEM and rural education and the urban poor. And there are also we use the game theory, which is basically what Magdalena has used as an approach on various subject matter, governance, gender issues, which is a very crucial thing because of the male and the boy child. Most gender-based issues now seem to be facing more the girl child. But if you do not bring both of them together, exposing them to the same gender education elements, then there will be always conflict. And that's one of the elements that media and information literacy seeks to begin to address, so that we have an equitable society, equitable male and female human beings persons. I'm beginning to understand the gender term, because man and hue are the same, it's still basically the male gender issue. Okay, where we have equitable persons who are beginning to see perspectives from both sides of the divide, and they can come together to begin to understand how to minimize conflict, how to work together to have a more gender equitable and gender equality based community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you for the brilliant presentation. I'm just going to add to it that after this presentation, I know that Bako will share with us the email address of Magdalena, so that we can share these materials with her, particularly because she works in rural areas, and I believe that these materials will be very useful and handy to her. We will equally share with you some of the cards that which we use to speak about media and information literacy. Having said this, like I said, we have in the House the representative of the Honorable Commissioner for Education in Niger State, and the representative will be looking at policies that bring education to low-income households, the policy that talks about rural education with a specific streamline to Niger State. So I'm calling on Alhaji Umar Farouk, or Mr. Farouk, as the case may be. Over, Mr. Farouk. Is the commissioner representative in the House, please? While waiting for him, please allow me to call on Mr. Aminu Mohammed Bako. He's the chairman of Bako Ranch Limited. He will be looking at rural sustenance agriculture, especially as it affects, as the COVID-19 affect our agriculture in rural area. You are aware that Nigeria is agricultural country in terms of the rural sustenance. Our parents are seen in every part of the rural areas trying to bring cassava, oranges, mangoes to the city. So Mr. Aminu Mohammed Bako will be looking at this in the next 5 minutes. Over to you,
please. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for bringing me on this platform, Mr. Macaulay. My name is Aminu Bako Mohammed. I'm a board member of Bako Contemporary Development Foundation and also MD, CEO of Bako Ranch Limited. Bako Ranch Limited is an agricultural company that is into all the value chain of agriculture, combined with youth empowerment, capacity building in the value chain of agriculture. Now my contribution on the impact of COVID-19 on rural livelihood, in Nigeria is the global compact COVID-19 is mostly covered and reported in urban communities, forgetting the rural areas that contribute about 50% of the world population. In Africa, especially in Nigeria, the rural people constitute about 70% of the country's population. In addition, about 80% of agricultural products consumed in urban community are produced from the rural community. In spite of all this contribution, the rural communities still remain very poor, uneducated, fragile, or absence of primary healthcare and other numerous social amenities, to mention few. Global warming, insecurity, many forms of, urban migration and diseases continue to subject the rural communities to abject poverty. Now, the impact of COVID-19 in the rural communities. To date, the impact of COVID-19 in the rural communities in Nigeria has not been reported by any government agency, which means that the government is yet to have any plan for rural areas. Nevertheless, government policy on COVID-19, especially the lockdowns policy, are hampering people from planting and selling crops, working day laborer and selling products, among other problems. Furthermore, the lockdown closes education facilities and the fragile healthcare system in the rural areas. Transportation of goods to the market is hampered and perishable food
Hello, Mr. Hamino Bako. Are you still there? I'm going to take him off now and possibly.
He's back, maybe. Obviously.
Made to rotten. Those can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Sorry,
Yeah,
the
go
network
on.
is the network is
Yeah,
very bad.
we understand.
Furthermore, the lockdown closes educational facilities and fragile care system in the rural area. Transportation of goods to the market is hampered, and perishable foods are made to rotten, creating a heavy economic burden on the populace. That means less income for desperately hungry people to buy food and less food available at higher prices. It is so certain that neglect of government COVID-19 policy in rural areas will soon or later affect the entire nation population and food security, you know, and food security. Mass death is anticipated as a result of weaker health, higher risk exposure, and exclusion from government palliative services. Government at central level, government at central level.
Hello, Amino. Can I make a proposition? Can you please put off your video? I think it will be better, so we can hear your question. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hello?
very well.
Okay.
We can hear.
Okay. Government at central level cannot reach out to all rural communities effectively. Therefore, the best way to help the rural communities is by engaging the NGOs and other registered humanitarian private agencies that will assist the government on some areas as enumerated below. My solution and suggestions, and strategies to the problem of COVID-19 in the rural communities. Interdisciplinary disease mass campaign. A door-to-door community campaign will be of value. Provide humanitarian support to those people most at risk, drawing on adapting existing social protection system as much as possible. This needs to be cooperative effort in which government, not government organizations, intergovernment agencies, and business work together with the local communities to ensure an effective rapid response. Educate people about how the disease spreads is also key. This effort will need to be locally owned as far as possible through providing information, volunteers, and resources to government and civil society organizations. Teach how to make local face masks, alcohol-based hand sanitizer, etc., and provide rural people with the tools to adapt and ensure a quicker recovery, averting an even higher humanitarian crisis. So we have to start thinking as soon as possible about creating more resilience form of social protection in rural areas by building back better. This improvement will need to be based on localism and build upon and strengthen the decentralized structure that exists in many countries, but which remain undeveloped. Another contribution here again is, we need to ensure rural poor stimulus facilities that give short-term relief to low-income earners and those living in poverty in rural villages. The rural poor stimulus facility will provide inputs for production of crops, livestock, and fisheries to small-scale producers so that they can weather the immediate effects of the common economic crisis. facilitate access to market, to support small-scale farmers to sell their products in conditions where restricted movement is interrupting the functioning of the market, including providing logistics and storage support. We also need to provide targeted funds for rural financial services to ensure sufficient liquidity is available and to ease immediate loan repayment requirements to maintain services, markets, and jobs for poor and the rural people. The use of digital services to share key information on production, weather, finance, and market. Another contribution again is to ensure the maintenance of agriculture, good supply, because agriculture contributes a lot to the GDP of this country. So it's important that the government should invest heavily on agriculture, because like I said, agriculture is the largest economic activity in the rural communities, where about 50% of the population lives. The agri sector also, employs about 70% of the working population. So agri sector is very, very important, that the government should invest heavily in this sector. Now, finally, 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 the digital method of communicating with each other and the rule that staying in touch online can play in contracting feelings of isolation and other mental health issues during the lockdown. Emphasizing the need for good broadband and mobile communication. Like as we are communicating now, we have been having interruption of the mobile network. So it's important that government should look into that as well. So in conclusion, government cannot do it alone. The government needs to partner with the private sector, the NGOs, the humanitarian agencies, to reach out into these local areas, in supporting the policy of government. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. We sincerely appreciate this presentation. We've all seen how the COVID-19 has affected or is affecting our rural dwellers. The produce they have, unfortunately, they can't take them to the city to sell. So this, in a way, hinders the funds they have. And this is what BACO Foundation is trying to do to support the rural areas, the rural dwellers, the rural parents, and so on and so forth, that the little funds in which they have will be able to be supplemented with the limited resources in the community and provide education for their children. You recall that most of these children to support their parents in farming. And I know that the government of Niger State is trying as much as possible to make sure that education gets to nook and cranny of the state. Having said this, I'm going to go back to the Commissioner of Education in the name of Ajia Anatu Saliu, being represented here by Mr. Ishaku Abubakar. I hope that Mr. Ishaku is in the house, please. You are now called for your presentation. Thank you. I have to move on. Please, we have to look at the issue relating to security, how the COVID-19 has affected some of our security area in terms of the economic of the rural and urban poor. Ata mentioned issue relating to gender and especially specifically with the poor women, our parents who are in the community. So, Mr. Fola Aina, International Security Analyst and Development Expert, will be putting light on how to enhance the economy for rural and urban poor after the COVID-19, its impact on our rural education. Over, Mr. Aina, please.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you can hear me. So, once again, just want to say a big thank you to Bako Kontagora Development
You
Foundation.
need to speak up a bit. You're a bit low. Sorry.
Can you hear me now? Hope it's better. Okay. Right. Once again, I want to say a big thank you to the Bako Kontagora Development Foundation for having me participate in this event, this webinar. I think it's not only timely, but also very important with regards to issues of gender and how it affects broader communities, not only in Niger State but in Nigeria at large, of course, Africa and the rest of the world. So I'm going to be very quickly talking about the impact of COVID-19 and with regards to enhancing the economy for rural and urban poor women during and after COVID-19, and of course its impacts on education, which was have been called to talk on. Just before I do that, let me quickly go into a few key issues. The first is unemployment. Okay, unemployment is a major issue for women with regards to this whole global pandemic. Unemployment is further exacerbated by during this global crisis. For instance, the International Labour Organization estimates that about 195 million jobs could be lost due to COVID-19.
Your mic is low. Maybe you need to check the microphone. It's a bit low.
Hear me now? Do I go on?
Please go on. You need to just speak up a bit.
Okay. So I was talking about unemployment, for instance, which is a general problem, that gets exacerbated during times of crisis like current crisis. It's to be expected that a lot of people will lose their jobs. Also women inclusive. So I was saying that, for instance, that the International Labour Organization estimates about 495 million jobs could be lost, due to COVID-19 globally. Also, some of the challenges that are peculiar to women during these times of global pandemics is the issue of overrepresentation in the informal economy. Women in rural communities, or poor women in rural communities, and also in urban communities, particularly poor women, are vulnerable, during these times because they depend largely on the informal economy. Okay, and also over 740 million women work in the informal sector globally as low wage earners. For instance, housekeeping, for instance, childcare, food services. These are jobs, most of the time are relegated to the informal sector. They aren't necessarily captured, in GDP, gross domestic product calculations, estimations. And so, because of the fact that they are mostly relegated to the informal economy, it makes it vulnerable. These jobs are vulnerable because they're not necessarily formal. Like I said, housekeeping, childcare, food services, in small restaurants, here and there. It's increasingly difficult for women who are increasingly dependent on these sources of livelihood to be able to survive during this global pandemic. Also, women comprise an average 43% of agricultural workforce in the developing world. So there's a direct impact on food security, as it has to relate with women during COVID-19. And then there's a fundamental issue that is often neglected which has to do with gender-based violence, with regards to women. These things are mostly induced by the issues of quarantine, lockdowns, and then they impede the ability of women to participate actively in economic activities. Okay. Having said this, let me just quickly go into what I consider to be the impacts, of the COVID-19, particularly on women. So one of the foremost impacts of the global pandemic on women would be the disruptions in income levels. Okay, and these disruptions in income levels could affect the purchase of critical necessities, for instance, medicines, and also food, and then the ability to also pay school fees, for their children, and also for themselves in order to acquire adult education. Also, there are concerns over the disruptions in education and learning opportunities, because most traditional school settings require you coming to school physically. As a result of the global pandemic, it's increasingly more difficult for women and girls to participate, in quality education, because most of them won't be able to go physically to schools, and then they're having to be limited to using maybe online sources. And then there are challenges that have to do with accessibility, internet, and then also devices, technologically enabled devices, for learning. And then also there's the issue of poor access to healthcare and other services due to diversion. So during global pandemics like the one we currently are faced with, scarce resources are usually diverted. Okay, and because these scarce resources are diverted, it becomes more difficult for women to have access to some of these healthcare services as well, which in the long run also affects their ability to be more productive in the economy, and in the long run affecting overall general performance with regards to economic activities. Right. Also, there are greater risks to for women with regards to the disposition of their lands and property, okay, during global pandemics, like we have with the global COVID. And then lastly, I would say there's the challenge of access to digital pay gaps. So generally problems have to do with digital pay gaps. So for instance, women earn about 24% less than men globally. On the other hand, also women are 14% less likely to own mobile phones and 43% less likely to engage online. So meaning that they stand a lesser chance of accessing things like cash transfers, during the global pandemic. Okay, so what are some likely remedies? What are some likely ways to ameliorate some of these challenges women are confronted with? So there is a need to ensure that national and state responses are reflective of gender integration. So in other words, more opportunities need to be given to women during this time, specifically targeted at ensuring that the effects of the global pandemic, isn't so much felt on women, And also there's a need to ensure that the well-being and the safety of women is also prioritized. Like I gave the example of gender related violence during this period. There's a need to ensure at state levels, that the well-being and safety of women is prioritized. Also, there's a need to foster a conducive environment, for women's participation in specific economic activities. Say, for instance, in the area of agriculture, it's important that women are given more access to lands, and more agricultural facilities during these periods, so that they can cater for themselves and their families, and also ensure and enhance productivity, and guarantee their own food security and that of their families. Also, there's a need to allocate more resources to guarantee the availability of social services for women, which I mentioned, for instance, healthcare services. It's important that priority is given to women and girls during these periods, because, like I said, generally they aren't, opportune in these regards. So with the global pandemic, it makes it even all the more difficult for women to have access, to social services like healthcare, and education. So it's important, that women are prioritized during this period. And one way to do this, in conclusion, one way to do this is through collaboration. So at state levels, it's important for the state governments, for instance, to collaborate with traditional rulers on the one hand, and also to collaborate with telecoms, for instance, in regards to education, to make access to internet services, more affordable for women, in local communities, and at the same time also to explore areas of collaboration with regards to um, the private sector, collaborating with private sector through PPPs, public private partnerships targeted at easing up the effects of the global pandemic, on women. And lastly, with regards to education, more specifically, one of the ways to augment, the drawbacks on the global pandemic with regards to women is for the state governments to explore more areas of making access to education for women in regards to television. So there's a particular TV show that's called Obongo. It's being used in some African countries. Obongo is a good model, for instance, educational TV show that can be expanded more to focus on women education. There's also radio, radios, because most women in rural communities will be dependent on radio for their sources of information. So it's important to integrate educational services through radio, use of radio, and then also mobile phones. Okay, for instance, SMS-based interactive learning. Okay, should be explored more to gain more access to women education. There's a good model. There's one called Eneza, also used across Africa. It's an SMS-based interactive learning where women or where people can learn using SMEs. And then finally, expanding the reach on online learning, basically, for women to have more access to. But like I understand, there are challenges with access to the internet or to technological tools, and this is where public-private partnerships can come in, and then also collaborations with telecoms. These are my humble submissions on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ainam. We have some challenges in terms of listening to you, and I know that most of the participants here must have been able to understand what you talk, especially as relate to gender-based violence and adversaries in terms of in rural areas, especially with our young girls who are in schools. I don't know if the representative of the Commissioner of Education is now in the house. If not, I will just throw some questions to the participant. Mr. Ishaku Abubakar, are you here? Well, during my introduction, I've spoken about internet problems, and I know that government has a lot to do in terms of
Hello. Hello.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear
you. Hello. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Very well. Speak.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hello. Thank you.
Abubakar, we can hear you. Please go on.
Okay, it's all right. I want to thank the Bako Contemporary Foundation for this initiative and for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Thank you very much. The discussion particularly centers on rural education, which is a very serious challenge in this part of the country. However, a lot of strategies, steps have been taken by the government to be able to ameliorate some of these rural education challenges. First of all, we need to understand that a majority of the Niger State citizens dwell in the rural area. So we can say about 65% of the Nigerite rural agrarians. Therefore, one of the serious challenges they face is that of rural access to education. But what the government has done is to establish additional schools. For example, in Niger State now we have over 3,138 primary and pre-primary schools to provide access to the rural majority. And this has been very, very significant. It has helped us to get more enrollment into primary schools. Because if you ordinarily say a child from school A, village A, to go to school B, which is about 10, 15 kilometers away, you are just wasting your time. So what we have been able to do, although the state has not been able to meet the 6 kilometer recommended by UNESCO, we have made effort to reduce it to at least, I think the highest you can go is about 7 kilometers for now. And this has significantly assisted us. And then another thing again is, because of poverty largely is one of the serious challenges with in this part of the country. So the they did was to provide what we call cash transfer. Some of these rural dwellers, particularly women, were to be able to transact small business, which they can use in providing daily upkeep money to their children to be able to go to school, so that the child has no reason, because you don't have a pocket money, you will not go to school, you don't have clean water, you don't go. And again, another thing the government has done is also to collaborate with UNICEF to provide safe water, what we call water and sanitation. You cannot ask the child to go to school to stay for 8 hours and you will have no access to water, particularly women. What we did was to collaborate with UNICEF, provide what we call VIP toilets with water that during, for example, if a woman had challenge. Then another important thing is that we also look at the part of this poverty issue is your child, for you to sponsor your child, even after the completion of secondary school, to be able to go further with her or his education. What we did for now is to first, provide scholarship to female learners, which was called female teacher training scholarship scheme that is provided to female learners to be able to go to school. So a lot of things have been done. And on the whole, the states, like any other state, make education free from primary to senior secondary school level. So you don't pay kobo. The government pays for everything, and in fact, provide you with exercise book, learning materials. Although these have not been 100%, but we have achieved to a large extent, and we hope to improve on it. Then we also, as part of this COVID-19, what we are doing now to be able to take care of the rural majority is to provide a platform where the rural majority, we know in all over the states, we have different radio stations that are very close to the rural people that they can easily access. So we collaborate with them, and they are providing lessons to the students. The stakeholders, including our partners, especially UNICEF, working towards providing alternative ways of learning, such as online open learning resources, home study exercise, radio and television-based learning, and regular follow-ups between teachers and learners to offset the missing learning opportunities, especially at the rural and hard-to-reach areas. Although the radio and television-based learning has since commenced in all the radio, FM, and TV stations across the state, anchored by the Ministry of Education and the Niger State Universal Basic Education Board. However, there is the need to do more in order to carry along the rural communities, physically challenged and other vulnerable groups, as well as ensure wider coverage to the hard to reach. This one, in the first phase of the radio program, we discovered that There are some remotest part of the state that couldn't access the radio, the lesson. So now we have decentralized the more. We have some community radio stations which were also now brought on board so that people at the rural area can easily connect and then take the lessons. I think those are some of the measures we have taken from the government side to be able to carry along the rural dwellers and low-income households. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bako. This meeting wouldn't have been able to finish without your presentation, because we actually wanted to know what the government is doing in Niger State. Before you, because we know you have some serious challenge with your internet. There are questions here, and I will first want to ask you the question. You're supposed to be the last question, but just to prevent recurrence of the internet connectivity challenge. There's this question what is government of Niger State doing to collaborate with CSO, that's civil society organization like Bako Katagora Development Foundation, to get education down to the rural dwellers? Because from your statistic, you have been able to tell us that we have over 60% of rural areas that you are trying to take education to. And we know that these are the initiative of Bako Kutangora Development Foundation. So what is Niger State government doing, or what do you think Niger State government will be able to do to support and collaborate with an organization like Bako, so that we can all get education down to the last person? You have heard about inclusion. Don't leave anybody behind. So that's a question to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think provision of education is capital intensive, and therefore the need to go all out in search of interested organizations and members, individuals who will be able to put hand on deck to be able to deliver education. We have discovered Bako Kontagora Foundation is available to us. It is an indigenous foundation, kind of. So we are happy. We will have to enter into discussion with them, like we have been doing with others, so that we will unfold our areas of interest, and then they will be able to support us and guide us on what to do, because that is the only way out. For the government alone, like I said earlier, cannot take on the responsibility of education, and we need support of foundations like Bako Kontagora Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. I'm not sure if we are online when Magdalena was doing a presentation.
No, I was not.
Oh, quite unfortunate. She was able to tell us how their initiative has been able to support rural dwellers. What I learned personally from it is the fact that it reduced a lot of financial implication on the government. And I know that maybe after this meeting, she may want to share a presentation with you or share with Bako, and they will be able to share with you, will be able to share with the Niger State government. I think this is an initiative that in Nigeria should emulate, and it's similar thing where we call school meet the learner approach, where all the content of us has been put into a small system where we can gather about 10 children together, and we have a facilitator that will guide them. I think I will appreciate if Niger State government can look at this with of Magdalena and her husband, as well as what UNESCO is doing with Bauchi State government, because we meet the learners approach. Once again, I want to thank you, Abubakar, for your presentation. I'm going to throw this question to Magdalena now, 2 questions. The questionnaire wants to know if you have this initiative in India.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Should be right now, yes? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Yes, so regarding the question whether we have implemented this particular project in India, it has not yet been implemented, but is applicable. We have been discussing with various organizations all over the world, actually, because this project, as it is applicable, is a solution that can be applied regardless of location, as I mentioned. So it would be amazing to support teachers in India with this kind of learning. So definitely we are happy to facilitate, and when there is partners who are enthusiastic, and you know, if we can get together on board people who can provide internet, you know, that we can reach to local and remote areas, that we can gather teachers in one places or different places in small groups, that we can reach them, and that there is local facilitators who would be responsible for organizing the meetings, as I mentioned, because this project utilizes. Let me maybe share this screen. This project utilizes the power of local people, yes. So that we training providers, we don't need to be there with you anywhere. That's why it's scalable. It can happen many places at the same time, yes, in many areas of the country. So it's a systematic solution to say that. So what we need is the power of local people. We give power to local people. We need local coordinators, as people like John, for example, yes, or the Bako Foundation, that will be responsible for coordinating the whole project locally, yes. So that what we do, we offer training solutions that are they're reaching teachers through thanks to internet and you know, electricity available, and nobody needs to really be. You don't need to train trainers, because the training trains the teachers. So it's very cost effective, and it's very impactful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You did mention about internet just to the close of your presentation, and this person wants to know that because in Nigeria we have the peculiar problem of internet connectivity, no doubt about that. And I said that my question is that there's still a gap for schools in the rural areas who do not currently have access to internet. How would you access the amazing materials provided by you?
So we've been. It's a very good question. We've been discussing this kind of things with various people around the globe, how to overcome this. So what we need to do, we don't need to reach every single school. So if we have a place in a region where teachers can come on a regular basis, for example, once a week, every second week, and they can gather in a hub, and when this hub has connectivity for the classroom, any place really, as you can see from the photos, it's a basic classroom, basic place. So then we can have groups of teachers that if a local people somehow, or government organization, can organize transport for them to get them to the place, for example, every second week for 2-3 hours, because the content is very, very, you know, impactful. We don't need to reach every single school. It's enough to have a hub, to have a place where those teachers will gather together, and there will be a person to coordinate, to facilitate discussions, to allow these people to view the content. The content facilitates discussion, brainstorming, sharing, exchanging of best practices. The teachers here, they gather once a week, and every week they would come back to the groups and they would share their achievements. So all of them all these things, as you can see, it is what the teachers have shared. They implemented and they brought it back together to the classroom, to the teacher training hub, the place, and they shared. So teachers learn not only from the content that we prepare, but also they learn from each other, and this creates massive empowerment. So if there is a hub, that would be enough.
Yeah, that would be enough for now. Let me ask you two questions in one. The first one is in connection with the last question you just answered now. You have talked about internet connectivity. This person is asking about electricity because some of our rural areas do not even have electricity. They don't have solar system, the one that we call energy saving system. So this person wants to know that the gadgets that are being provided, how do they access electricity? That's one question. The second one is that this person talks about curriculum, that curriculum differs in different countries, different community or environment, that what you are teaching, are they in line with the curriculum of the country in which you are implementing your projects? Over, please.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Very important questions. First question about the electricity. As I mentioned, we need to work together. So us as teacher provider, teacher training provider, we need to make sure that we deliver highly impactful content. And on our side, we made sure that the training can be scalable, but we cannot do it alone. So we need to work together with local partners. So internet providers, electricity providers, local governments, local organizations, we need all to work together to make it happen, because there is no way we can be responsible for the electricity and for everything. It has to be a collaborative effort to make it happen. But this kind of solution kind of lifts so much from the burden, lifts so much burden from it's already scalable, it's already so feasible and easy to implement and scalable, that these basic things like electricity and internet, so we need to make sure we work together to make it happen, to provide the electricity, to provide the internet, and somehow to make it happen. And once, maybe even if the teachers are trained locally, they can pass on this knowledge to more teachers and more teachers. And, this way we will have the kind of scaling and ripple effect, because those who have been trained, they will share their best practice with those teachers and those schools on an everyday basis who do not have access maybe to the electricity, internet. So teachers train teachers, we share best practices. The second question. So as you know, I mentioned my background is I'm an assessor in children's learning. So what it means that I'm responsible for making sure that the training content that we provide, or other teachers provide, or a school provide, can be cross-referenced with any curriculum that the teachers are working with. So the content that we prepare is matchable with every curriculum on a global, of every country. And this is because it's based on principles of natural learning. It's cross-curricular by nature, it's multidisciplinary. And in the training, we also show teachers how to see learning takeaways, tangible learning takeaways related to science, biology, geography, how to match the learning experiences they offer with their local curriculum. Because this is what we do as assessors, yes? When we enter a provision, we need to see that what the teacher is doing can be cross-referenced with the local curriculum of any country. So we made sure that what the teachers receive, they know, they can be sure that it will be applicable with any curriculum of any country. So this is to make sure, make sure that it's applicable. Yes. Hello.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering if the representative of the commissioner is still in the house. Hello, Mr. Abubakar, you still?
Yes,
yeah,
I'm there.
Yeah, thank you. Someone is just wondering that the school may resume very soon, and I know that this question is for all the governments in Nigeria, all over the world, that the school is resuming question that how would government handle the issue of physical distances when the children are eventually called back to school? Among the teachers, the parents, and the school, and the teachers over place. Did you get my question, Mr. Abubakar? Hello? Anyway, while waiting for him, I'm coming back to you, Magdalena. Let's go to Bako Foundation first. How do you currently support the children with special needs, disability within the school where you work? Hello?
Yeah.
So, Bako Foundation.
Yeah, Magdalena, this question is for two of you. So,
okay.
Yeah, you can do justice to it while we are with Sarah to come and respond.
Okay. The question was about neurodiversity and special needs. So I take the opportunity. I like to work with visuals. So let me go back to the screen again and show these beautiful children working with local teachers, passionate. So neurodiversity and special needs. When we go back, it all goes back in majority to sensory integration and personalized learning. So when we talk about active learning, the learning will always be sensory because it will happen through touch, through vision, through smells, through moving around. So children with this neurodiverse needs, they need lots of sensory stimulation and appropriate, not too much, not too little. So obviously, ideally, it would be that we can work with them in a smaller group, so we have personalized attention. But it's not always possible in underprivileged areas. So we realize this. So the teachers need to be empowered to know how to offer sensory stimuli so that the children can receive the proper stimulation. And this happens through active learning. They can touch, as you can see. They can use their senses. They can smell. They can see. They can move. So this is very important. And this way, we are also offering more personalized learning, which is not really one-on-one or one-to-one, so teacher versus a child, because this will require, separate rooms, working. It is very costly. It's not always possible. So in this scenario, we need to make sure that the teachers are equipped with the skills to offer personalized attention, meaning we organize the learning environment in the classroom in a way where all children can find something to satisfy their needs. It's more like play and learning station. We like to call it like that. When those children with specific sensory needs, they can do and take their time to do whatever is appropriate for them, because there will be offered experiences that address their particular situation. So even if there is 30, even 60 children, it's not an ideal scenario, but if we organize the environment, no matter how simple it is, in an appropriate way, and work through these play and learning stations on a regular basis, so these children, they can have the sensory stimulation, they can, release their energy, because sitting still for many children, especially with sensory needs, is very difficult. They cannot sit still and absorb all the information coming to them through the teacher. So we need to make sure that these children, they can touch. And as you can see here, touching a fruit, making a sound with a bamboo or whatever it is, just being able to touch something, and especially if you are a high energy person. So it offers enough sensory stimulation for these children. And if teachers know how to do it, then we can make sure that at least the basic needs are taken care of. So that's why active multisensory learning, experiential learning is the key here, is the key to addressing all specific needs. And also,
I don't know if Sarah is in the house now. We are bringing this meeting to close in the next 2 minutes. Is she in the house? Sarah, are you there? Well, if she's not around, maybe I may have to call on Is Mr. Aminu there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. In the next few seconds, since Sarah is not around, you will be doing justice to a closing for me on behalf of her. But from my side, I just have to say big thank you to
Macaulay, do you know how what was Zara?
Sorry, I didn't know you are here. Pardon my.
Zara, and I was wondering.
No, don't mind me. I'm sure I want to get one Zara from your side. Now the question which Angelina has been able to answer, but from your side, the questionnaire wants to know what support are you giving?
We're working hand in hand together with Magdalena to take care of that issue. She has said it all.
Okay. So I take it that she has done justice to that. So now you're here. I want us to bring this meeting to a close. And like I was trying to say, from my part here, I have seen that together we can do it better. And the COVID-19 has brought a new narrative to each and every one of us. And I want to say that we have more participation during the COVID-19 era than the usual meeting that we call, because a whole lot of people are at home now. And I will just have to end there that this is a very good initiative from you. And don't let it just be in Niger State. You know, we had a discussion before this meeting that it should not just be state alone. See as much as you can to take it to other states in the northern part of the country. And if resources allow you, don't hesitate to work with some other people in the eastern part of the country, as well as the western part of the country. This is an initiative that UNESCO will be willing to work with you, especially the area of school-made learner that I've explained to you earlier. And this is the same thing you are doing. I will have to end there and say a big thank you to you on behalf of some of my colleagues in the House. The representative of Honorable Commissioner of Education, like I've said earlier, we want to see you work together with the Bako Kutangora Development Foundation on this initiative. It's alarming to know that we have over 60-something% of rural dwellers in Niger State. And if we don't take education to them, we may not be doing justice to them. And this is why we talked about inclusion, irrespective of where you live or where you stay on the edge of the world. So I want to say a big thank you to you. While I leave you with the founder of Kutangora Development Foundation. Over, please.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It was really an amazing webinar. And in conclusion, the takeaway is, one, sensitization of child rural education, which is rural education COVID-19 response. New curriculum that need current reality. Partnership. How do we use this current situation in terms of economic development, education beyond employment, sharing good practices, new normal, local to global, COVID-19 new normal, rural to urban migration. How are we going to deploy rural education of the neglected bottom in view of migration? Austicization of relearning to rural area. So I think that is the takeaway. And after this, we're going to have the post-seminar COVID-19 discussion. We continue from where we start. Nice having everyone. Thank you, Magdalene. Thank you, Amina Mohamed Bao. Thank you for Laaina. Thank you, Macaulay, UNESCO. Thank you, GHETTO. Thank you, the representative of Commissioner of Niger State. Thank you all for having me. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.